Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today in the shop behind me is a 99 F-450. It's got the 7.3 turbo diesel in it. Customer's complaint is the temperature gauge doesn't work, always stays at cold. First thing I did was verify that complaint. Test drove it, it does not move, always is at cold. So as I drove it, the heat started working just fine. Everything else seemed to be normal. So I'm not suspecting any type of coolant problem or thermostat problem, because you wouldn't get heat out of the vents or anything if it wasn't getting up to operating temperature. So we're going to figure out what the temperature gauge reads, where's that sensor at, do some testing around there, and figure out this problem. Alright, so the sensor is a real easy location, real easy access to get to the wiring and everything. So before we unplug it and do all that, I'm going to test the wires. I went out and printed off a wiring diagram, and we'll take a look at that right now. So this big blue box right here is your instrument cluster, and then you got this little blue box down here. This is engine coolant temp gauge B9. So up here at the very bottom, again, might be hard to read, connector A. Go down a little bit further, connector B, connector C. So here's B, here's 9, I've got it highlighted. Breaks off the diesel, which is to the left, that's what we have. Okay, so red, white is going to be some sort of voltage, and then your yellow, red is going to be ground all the time. So we'll have some sort of voltage on this, and it should have ground all the time on here. So let's set this up and run some of these checks. Okay, here's your coolant temperature sensor located right next to your upper radiator hose. You've got a red and white wire and a yellow and red wire. The red one is your voltage and the yellow one should be the ground. So what we're going to do is, I've got my meter hooked up to negative, and then here's the positive. We're just gonna back probe the red wire. Okay, then we'll go turn on the truck. See what our reading is. We do have voltage, 10.2, looks like it's going up. Does have the lights on and everything. Okay, so we got voltage there. Next thing I want to do is check to see if we have ground there. Take this other lead, back probe the yellow wire. And then I've got my test light hooked up to positive, so if it finds ground, it'll turn on. So I'm going to take the end here, stick it in here, see if we have any ground here. It's not lighting up. Got no wiggle in it, still got no light. So I think we're gonna have a ground problem here. Let's see, what I'll do is I'll back probe the negative with my voltmeter still hooked up to ground and see what our reading is. Okay, we do have voltage on the ground side too. So it looks like we are dealing with a bad ground. We do not have ground at this sensor. So before I go too far, we can confirm the sensor actually works. We'll supply ground to there, let the truck warm up, and see if the gauge starts working. So let me add a ground there. Okay, so before I add I've got a ground wire right here hooked up to add the ground, but before I do that, I want to unplug this sensor with it still back probed and see if I get 0 volts on that ground side. Right now I'm still at 11 volts on the ground side, so I'll unplug it like so. Still hooked up, no voltage. So that does tell me that we do not have ground. There is a broken wire or something is going on with ground, and with it plugged in, the voltage is just flowing through the sensor and then back out the ground side, and that's why we have voltage on the ground side with it plugged in. So now what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to add this wire that I have hooked up to ground. I'm going to plug this back in, take this back probe pin out, and I'm going to supply ground just like so. And now we'll go start up the truck, let it warm up, and see if the temperature gauge is working. This will let us know that there is no ground, and if it does work, then we know that the sensor is also good. So let's start it up. Okay, so the truck's been running for about 15-20 minutes. Let's take a look at the gauge and see what we got going on. Look at that. Temp gauge is not working. So now I'm going to shut this thing off so it's quieter. There we go. So just by supplying the ground, we now know that that is the problem. The temperature gauge is working just fine. So now we're gonna chase that wire, figure out where it's broke, and repair it. Let's head to the front of the vehicle. All right, here we are back at the front. I've just removed the coolant reservoir, kind of slid it over to the side just to give me more room in this area. Go ahead and remove these. Now we'll start searching for that brake. It's down in here. Just gonna follow the wires from there, see if you can't spot any where they've been rubbing or anything. There it is. Right there. Definitely a yellow and red wire. That was an easy find. I did find that early on before we even tested the wires just by looking, but I wanted to bring you along, show you how to test some wires, what to look for, how to make sure the sensor was still working. So I'm gonna pull back that wire loom, fix that wire, restart it, make sure the temp gauge is working. All right, I've got the wire repaired. I've got the coolant reservoir back on. Let's take a look at the repair. There it is, soldered and then electrical taped. So now what we're going to do is go in the truck, start it up, make sure the temperature gauge is working. Might already still be working from when we warmed it up earlier. Oh, look at that. Already seen it move. All right, we already seen it move past the cold, but what I'll do is I'll let it warm up some more. And once it gets up in the operating temperature, I'll come back to show you guys. Okay, so the truck's been running for a little bit. Temperature gauge is definitely working. Customer will be happy about that, so I'm gonna go ahead and shut it off. There we have it. Problems fixed, no parts required. That's how I go about diagnosing something like that. Got to know powers, grounds, and what you're looking for. And thank you for watching. If the video helped you, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.